Happy Monday, everybody. Welcome to a new episode and a new week of China Update, where we discuss leading political, economic, and geostrategic analysis on the world's number 2 economy. My name is Tony. Big episode today, some very concerning developments that we need to cover. Today's video will also contain this month's first of 2 sponsored features. This is the first time that I'm working with a sponsor from this industry. It is a especially interesting and exciting opportunity. We'll cover that later in the episode. But first up, we begin with a dangerous development from yesterday. Let's jump in. Tensions between China and Japan escalated sharply over the weekend after Tokyo accused Chinese fighter jets of locking military-grade radar onto Japanese F-15s near Okinawa, an act Japan's defense minister Shinjiro Koizumi condemned as, quote, dangerous and extremely regrettable, end quote. At an emergency 2 a.m. press conference on Sunday local time, Koizumi said Japan had lodged a strong protest with Beijing after documenting 2 radar lock-on incidents over international waters close to disputed islands. China swiftly rejected the accusation. A naval spokesperson said carrier-based jets from the Liaoning were engaged in, quote, routine training, end quote, that had been announced in advance, accusing Japan of slander and warning that China would, quote, resolutely safeguard, end quote, its security interests. The exchange marks the most serious military flare-up since a similar 2013 confrontation, which Beijing also denied. This is, of course, incredibly dangerous. The radar episode comes atop of a broader deterioration in bilateral relations that began in early November when Prime Minister Sanai Takaichi told Parliament that a Chinese attack on Taiwan could trigger a Japanese military response. Since then, we have been following the deterioration and the rising tensions between the 2 Asian powers. Beijing blasted the comment at the time as a red line violation. Since then, China has unleashed political, economic, and cultural retaliation, discouraging tourism to Japan, restricting seafood imports, cancelling Japanese entertainment events, and intensifying military patrols near Japan and Taiwan. We have followed all of this over these last few weeks. Tokyo has attempted to calm the situation by reiterating its long-standing position on Taiwan as outlined in the 1972 Japan-China Joint Statement. Late last week, Takaichi stressed that Japan's fundamental stance, quote, has not changed, end quote, but Beijing dismissed this as insufficient, demanding that she retract earlier remarks. Chinese social media briefly celebrated her statement as a relenting, though foreign ministry officials maintained a harder line. Strategic analysts warn the region may be entering a more dangerous phase. Ken Jimbo of Keio University noted that Japan appears to be expanding the scale of People's Liberation Army operations around Japan and Taiwan to normalize a heightened PLA presence and deter possible US or Japanese intervention in any Taiwan conflict. Some experts believe another round of major PLA drills, possibly the so-called Straight Thunder 2025B exercise, could be imminent. Complicating matters further, Tokyo is reportedly frustrated by what it views as insufficient public backing from the Trump administration. While US officials insist Washington's commitment is unchanged, Japanese diplomats have urged more visible support as China increases pressure. With military encounters now intersecting with political brinkmanship and great power signaling, the China-Japan relationship enters the final weeks of the year in a state of acute volatility and danger. Next up, we move to the Chinese economy, where domestically we are seeing more red flags. China issued more than 10 trillion yuan, $1.41 trillion in local government bonds during the first 11 months of this year, highlighting Beijing's increasingly difficult path to managing mounting repayment pressures while sustaining investment-led growth. According to data from the Enterprise Early Warning Platform based on official Chinese numbers, incredibly, about 62% of bond proceeds, roughly 6.2 trillion yuan, were funded into refinancing maturing obligations and resolving hidden local government debts. This included 4.8 trillion in refinancing bonds, a massive 20% increase from a year earlier, along with 1.4 trillion yuan in newly issued special purpose bonds used to settle overdue payments to enterprises. We've discussed this before, money owed to local businesses. This is worth repeating. According to official numbers, over half, 62% of new debt creation at the local level is now going to covering existing debt obligations. The remaining 3.8 trillion supported major development projects. Of this, around 3.1 trillion of new special purpose bonds was allocated across key sectors. 27% to municipal and industrial park infrastructure, 17% to transportation projects and land reserves, 12% to affordable housing, and 11% to social programs. Policy adjustments this year also allowed special purpose bonds to fund land reserves for the first time, channeling over 500 billion yuan into stabilizing the real estate market. That is, local governments are borrowing to buy land to maintain land use sales as a source of government revenue. This is not a sustainable practice, and as regular viewers of China Update know all too well, it has had a very limited effect on stabilizing the housing market. By the end of September, China's local government debt balance reached 53.7 trillion yuan, remaining below the official ceiling of 57.9 trillion. However, some analysts, including with the IMF, believe that this number is closer to 100 trillion yuan, $14 trillion US. On these developments, Peking University Professor of Finance Mark Perez observed yesterday, quote, "For years, the main purpose of borrowing has been to roll over the debt that cannot be served directly or indirectly from the economic value created by the projects the debt funded." End quote. Next up, we move to Hong Kong. But first up, silver is exploding, and why? Markets are reacting to the AI robotics drain. Every single advanced technology crucial to the US versus China superiority race, from the fastest services to the sensors to every humanoid robot, is built on silver. And it's not just the best conductor, it is the irreplaceable catalyst for the future economy. And today's video sponsor is tied to this do-or-die trillions-dollar race between China and the United States for the next industrial revolution. Humanoid Global Holdings. Ticker symbol RBOHF. In a world where only big companies have access to investment in this massive emerging space, Humanoid Global Holdings gives regular folks the opportunity to basically invest in a humanoid robotic sector index. Shares of Humanoid Global Holdings are available through Interactive Brokers, Schwab, Fidelity, E-Trade, and others. We are not just early with this one, we are standing at the 0-mile marker of what could be the most profound productivity shift in human history. Humanoids are the quintessential early-stage investment, and to capitalize on this window of opportunity, Humanoid Global Holdings is one of the only publicly traded companies that is a pure play focused on this sector. Each of us gets very few chances in life to be at the inception moments of transformative industries, part of the birth of ground floor opportunities with global influence that will result in trillions of dollars of wealth created. Humanoid Global Holdings has publicly committed to or closed indirect strategic investments in the following 5 companies representing key parts of the emerging humanoid robotics ecosystem. Again, these are startups which are private, so there's no other way to gain exposure to them for the average retail investor. 1. Agility Robotics, developer of the bipedal humanoid robot Digit. Shareholders of Humanoid Global are invested in Agility alongside Amazon Industrial Innovation Fund and NVIDIA. 2. Apptronic, developer of the general-purpose humanoid robot Apollo. Shareholders in Apollo are sitting alongside Google and Mercedes-Benz. 3. RideScan, developer of an AI-powered safety and performance platform for autonomous robots. 4. How2 Robot, a global marketplace that connects businesses looking for automation with robotics solution suppliers. 5. Formic, a company offering robotics as a service RAAS to small and mid-sized manufacturers. This focuses on the development and financial model, RAAS, that lowers the barrier to entry for automation. The most important point here is this: Humanoid Global Holdings gives an investor the access to the humanoid sector in its startup phase when companies are still private, the type of access that is virtually impossible for the average person and is reserved for well-connected angel investors, hedge funds and endowments, and big tech. The access directly investing in private startups makes Humanoid Global Holdings a standalone investment company which is publicly traded and available to anyone, not just accredited investors or funds. Even ETFs, which will be available later on, will be mostly invested in publicly traded companies, not in startups. This is unique to Humanoid Global Holdings. Do your homework on Humanoid Global Holdings, one of the only publicly traded humanoid companies out there this early. This is a sponsored feature. It is not individual investment advice. More information on this company, including relevant disclosures, are in the description below. A big thank you to Humanoid Global Holdings for sponsoring this episode. We now return to regular coverage. And finally for today, Hong Kong's government intensified its campaign to boost voter turnout in Sunday's tightly controlled legislative election, even as the city continued to grieve the 159 victims of last month's catastrophic fire, Hong Kong's deadliest blaze in decades. The tragedy, fueled by substandard construction materials, has sparked urgent questions about building oversight and whether long-term safety warnings were ignored. With most opposition candidates barred under the post-2020 national security rules, pro-establishment figures vetted by Beijing are virtually guaranteed to dominate the polls. For many residents, the voting push feels discordant amid grief and frustration. Quote, "I'm not voting," end quote, said a 55-year-old Mary Chan while folding paper cranes at a memorial, speaking to US-based The New York Times, adding, quote, "What's the point?" End quote. Authorities have moved aggressively to control the narrative. National security police have arrested at least 3 people since the fire, accusing unnamed, quote, anti-China elements, end quote, of exploiting public anger. On Saturday, Beijing's National Security Office summoned several international news organizations to warn against, quote, false information, end quote, and, quote, smear campaigns, end quote. The phrasing, attendees noted, carried the unmistakable tone of a threat. Despite calls to delay the election, Chief Executive John Lee insisted that a new legislature was essential for post-fire reconstruction and regulatory reform. In the days leading up to yesterday's election, Hong Kong was plastered with voting reminders, jingles in public restrooms, banners across districts, and workplace incentives coordinated with chambers of commerce. Even displaced residents of Wang Fok Court were targeted, with social workers instructed to help them locate polling stations and transportation. Orders some staff said felt inappropriate as families struggled through trauma and displacement. Local government went all out to increase voting. Turnout on Sunday was widely interpreted as a barometer of public legitimacy for Hong Kong's re-engineered political system, though only 20 of 90 seats are now directly elected, down from 35 before Beijing's 2021 overhaul. But despite all its efforts, the local government will be disappointed. On Sunday, 31.9% of the 4.1 million registered voters cast ballots. That is a marginal improvement from the 30% turnout in 2021, but still historically low. Okay, that is today's episode of China Update. Thank you so much everybody for watching. Have a good Monday. Have a productive week, and I hope to see you for another episode tomorrow.